Salutations, my esteemed students of Siege Warfare, and welcome back to another lecture with Professor Siege Captain, where today we are learning about a weapon so beautifully simple, and perchance the first recorded siege weapon. We're talking about the long wooden pole, proving that sometimes the best engineering solution is to just poke it until it breaks. Make sure to stay for Professor Siege Captain's whole lecture so that even you can figure out how to use this complicated siege device. The comments on the last two videos have been wonderful. I do this channel for the interaction, the dialogue between you and I. Without you guys, I'm just here yelling at a camera. Make sure you get down to the comments and let me know your brilliantly easy solution for a complicated task.
Yes, Professor. Is today's lecture really gonna be on a stick?
Oh, my naive dear pupil, you misunderstand. The long wooden pole represents the purest form of siege engineering. The long wooden pole comes into the ancient siege meta around the 28th century BC. That's a long time ago. Depictions come to us from, who else? Of course, the ancient Egyptians. On this pharaoh's tomb here, you can see the two lads in a shed with the long wooden pole. This image is iconic to me. That's big stick energy. That's big siege energy. You're gonna roll up to a siege with the only weapons to destroy the wall being a long wooden pole. I love that. That's moxie. That's gumption right there. When I first saw it, I was in disbelief. I was like, what are these guys doing? And you read about it in the description, and yes, they're poking a wall with a long wooden pole. After its grand debut in the Siege Warfare meta, we never see it again. At least I haven't seen it. I see this one depiction of it being used, gone from history, never used again. I wonder why that is. The concept is beautifully simple, of course. Step 1, get a long wooden pole. Step 2, poke the wall until it breaks, hopefully. This strategy was particularly effective against mud brick walls. What are mud brick walls, you might ask? Well, they're the building material of choice for the ancients. It's held together by taking mud, adding some kind of fiber like grass or straw. I think grass and straw are the same thing. I'm not a farmer, obviously. And then lots of hopes and prayers holding these things together. You're basically piling up dried mud. Mud bricks, it's in the name. These have a particularly easily exploitable feature. They crumble quite easily. They can hold a lot of stacking force, but once you start poking it, little chunks of them are gonna flake off and break apart. And you do that long enough, you can start breaking the bricks. Break enough bricks, the whole wall is gonna come crumbling down. That's where the long wooden pole comes in. Mud brick was the building material of choice for the ancients. I guess they never really thought that someone would just roll up with a long wooden stick and poke their walls to death. If they thought about that, maybe they'd build their walls out of something useful, like stone. I get that there was limited resources and you can't just find usable stone for your walls. I'm just cracking jokes here. In the depiction from the aforementioned Egyptian tomb, we can see the two men using the stick with a protective barrier over them. What would this be? Probably just a wooden shed. The long wooden pole is long, but it's not long enough to keep you out of archer fire, so you would need the wooden shed to protect you. Also, you're gonna need a defensive force providing covering fire, because if the enemy can just come down the walls and attack your little fortification, your stick and wooden shed are not gonna do a thing. This tactic was not a mainstay in the meta. Who even knows how long it was used in the meta? Maybe it was just used at this one siege. If you know any other uses of this long wooden pole technique, let me know. I would love to learn about it. The historical context of this weapon is very limited, so we're gonna get right into the weapon specifications. They're also limited, as you can imagine. Let's break down the technical specifications of this masterpiece of siege engineering. How would you build such a device? Step 1, find a long wooden stick. Step 2, you're done. You have a siege weapon. Even you can do that at home. No power tools required. It just so happens I have today's weapon on hand. Ha ha ha. The long wooden pole. Pay no attention to the metal end. That's made out of steel. They might not be ready for that, but their great grandchildren are gonna love this. In ancient times, flexing your wealth and mogging on your enemy was a lot easier. This tip could have just been made out of bronze, or stone, or even bone. Any type of hard material on the tip would greatly increase the effectiveness of poking a mud brick wall. I just had a realization. Isn't gypsum drywall just kind of like mud brick? Could I poke this entire wall to death? I don't think the wife would enjoy that too much. Also, I'd have to be the one to fix it. We're not gonna poke my walls to death with this spear. But today's topic is not a spear. It is a long wooden pole. These long wooden poles would have been about 10 to 15 feet long. That's long enough for them to poke at the weak points of the walls without having the risk of big rocks being dropped on their heads. You needed the wooden shed to ensure your troops are not going to be turned into pincushions. As previously mentioned, the pole's primary target was the weak points in mud brick walls. The technique for using this weapon is as follows. Step 1, firmly grasp it. Step 2, prod at the mud brick walls in the cover of your wooden shed. You're gonna have your lad beside you for probably 2 reasons. I'm speculating here. Again, there's not a lot of historical context. Take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. I'm not actually a history professor. I just play one on the internet. So, you have your spear, you grasp it. You're gonna prod at the mud brick walls. Your boy next to you is gonna be holding up the wooden shed, keeping it in position so you don't get hit by the arrows. Also, prodding away all day in the hot desert sun, you're probably gonna get tired. So what do? Give the spear to your friend. He probably knows how to use it. Hopefully he's smart enough to figure that out. And he can begin prodding while you get to have the excellent job of standing there holding up the wooden shed. I, Professor Siege Captain, would probably like this job. Sitting in a shed with your bro, that's a romance story right there. That's a good time, okay? Also, you probably get a sick nasty arm pump manning the wooden pole. After hours of prodding, your entire upper body is gonna just be bulbous and pumped. If I ever find myself back in the 28th century BC, I'm gonna be on that long wooden pole. That sounds wrong. So what do you do if you find yourself facing off against the marvel of siege engineering? You have a couple counterplay options. 1, you could have built your walls out of anything but garbage mud brick. Smart defenders could have built their walls out of better materials, but this required foresight and planning, a skill that not many ancient defenders had. So what else can you do against the long wooden pole? You have your garbage walls and you're hoping to withstand a siege. You could try breaking the long wooden poles. You know, they're gonna be out of range of dropping rocks on the operators, but you could just drop a rock on the wooden pole. I'm sure it would snap, or at least cause some damage to the wooden pole. And this leads us to Professor Siege Captain's 100% historically accurate ranking of the long wooden pole. And first of all, going over some quick pros and cons. Beautifully simple. It's easy to build. No special tools required. You could build one with just using your knee to break off the stick off the tree. Another pro is it's easy to learn, easy to master. Even the dumbest of soldiers could probably figure out how to use this weapon. That's about all the pros. This weapon doesn't have a lot of them. Cons? Very limited effectiveness against any wall type that isn't poorly constructed mud bricks. It also probably doesn't do a very good job of protecting the user. It doesn't do a very good job of killing the defenders. It doesn't do a good job of about anything other than standing there and poking at rocks. It basically was never used in siege warfare other than in this one depiction. It did not stand the test of time. It is not used in the siege meta anymore. I guess if you do consider the long wooden pole just a long spear, maybe you can make that argument, but I think the spear was for a slightly different job than poking a wall. With all this said, I'm giving the long wooden pole a D tier ranking. I might have hyped up this weapon for the video. It is not a very good siege device. It lacks effectiveness, it lacks power, it lacks relevancy. It basically doesn't do anything other than being simple to use and build. Yes, you can build this and use this anywhere, anytime you want, but you're not going to. It doesn't do very much. But the pole represents some of the simplest, most pure forms of siege warfare. This is a weapon you could build with your kid. It is pure, it is simple, and you can get them started on their siege warfare track at a young age. And that's gonna bring us to the end of Professor Siege Captain's lecture for today. I, Professor Siege Captain, am an eternal student though. Please let me know in the comments below the coolest fact you learned. Also, let me know anything you think I should know about the long wooden pole. Tell me, what weapon do you want to see next on the tier list ranking? Give me an entire list of weapons you want to see. Make them as interesting as possible. I've seen a lot of siege weapons, but I'm sure there's some out there I do not know about. Either way, thank you for watching. We have a finite amount of time on this planet. It's the one resource we can't get any more of, and you decided to spend some of that with me. I really do appreciate it. If you want to continue the dialogue in a more apt spot rather than the YouTube comment section, you can head on over to my Reddit. I made a Reddit, Siege Weapons of History. I went on Reddit and looked up siege weapons. All I could find was this silly video game named Siege and no siege weapon Reddit. So I took it upon myself to build it, to bring the siege weapons subreddit into the world. Hop on over there and I'll talk to you about siege weapons all day if you want. At 10K, I'm gonna be giving away this wooden box here that yours truly, Professor Siege Captain, built. It's made out of red oak. It's got cool little metal-y bits on it. Opens up. Whoa, you could store a lot of stuff in there. You could store the tips for your long wooden pole in here. And you could transport them to the siege. That's convenient. It latches too. That's gonna do it for today's lecture. Go forth, siege the day. Class dismissed. Wall pokers. Lily. She's mad because I'm yelling so much. This is the time of day she usually sleeps, and I'm in here yelling about long wooden poles. She's very upset.